Are you ready for an open discussion with the best of the best and the best of what's next? Welcome to the Tony DUrso Show. Join in on a great conversation today with some of the world's great influencers as they showcase great advice and techniques that made them the game changers they are today. Now, here's Tony DUrso.
Welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We're chatting with someone at the top of their category, an elite entrepreneur. Now get ready, guys. We're going to talk about cultivating sovereign leadership with Michelle Sorro. Now, chances are that to get to where you got to now, someone may have helped you. Maybe you started off on your own. Maybe somebody pointed out the path to you. Maybe you got inspired from reading a book, watching a webinar, or a speech. You know what I mean? Now, we have coaches, consultants, mentors, trainers, all sorts of names of people that help us get to where we want to go. But there's really one big difference. I think it's huge. And that is a coach, a consultant, a trainer, for example, is not going to take you while they're sitting at their house, or even if you're in their studio, they're not going to take you physically up to Mount Everest. You know that. It's obvious. The information can be vital and be the difference between life and death, of course. But who takes you up that mountain successfully? That's right. You all know this answer. A Sherpa. A Sherpa takes you up the mountain, i.e., a guide. And sometimes you need a guide to take you through to success. And while we're at it, this is all about helping you and your friends turn your vision into reality. We want to help you get very successful at making it to success at the top of the mountain in your class, in your category. Meet Michelle Sorro. She's a former TV retail host turned seven-figure transformational trainer and co-host of Podcast Accelerator and the founder of Live Sales Mastery and Liberated Leadership. Sounds like fun? It is. Let's dive in and find out more. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the Tony DUrso Show.
Hi, Tony. Good to meet you again. I'm really honored to be here and sharing this conversation.
The honor is mine, and I'm a fellow entrepreneur as well. And we're all looking forward to learning about cultivating sovereign leadership. And I've got a lot of questions, but right before I go into that, maybe let's start from the top or from the back. What's your backstory? How did it all start for you?
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. Okay. If I go back to seriously when I was about 5 years old, I declared that I wanted to be a television host. And I eventually got to live that dream way later in life. I've always called myself a bit of a late bloomer. I'm just continuing to emerge of what I really want. That's important to get clarity on that big question that so many have difficulty answering. What do we want? But my dream from 5 years old stayed very consistent. I wanted to get on TV. Then I went to a Tony Robbins seminar called Date with Destiny at the end of 2017. And that was the first of many awakenings ever since. On day 5 of that event, where you basically deconstruct your entire life, your rules, your values, all of the stories that got you to where you are, you learn to let go of what no longer serves you and what to basically create from scratch, which would be called your destiny. But I went to that event. All I wanted was Tony to teach me how to turn my 1 day a week shopping segment on Extra, an entertainment news show, into a full-time, maybe award-winning role one day. And there was a lot of talk about that expansion of my role already in the works because I'd been on that show for about a year at that point. Well, day 5 or 4 of that event, Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny, I literally dropped to my knees. It was one of those moments where I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed because I heard this little still small voice say in the back of my head as music was blaring and the sounds were going, the sound, the lights, the people, 5,000 unleashed souls in this arena in Palm Beach, Florida. And the voice said, your dream is not to be a television host anymore. That was your little girl dream. And that would be how you knew that you mattered, that you were worthy, and that you had made it in the world. And I was like, huh? Because it was so foreign. It's all I knew. I was so devoted to this one concept and this one outcome. I had never really reassessed as an adult. Does this really land? Does it really align anymore? And so, anyway, I didn't know what to do about that thought, but I knew it was truth speaking to me in a way that I hadn't heard before. And the next day, a friend at that very same seminar said, "You should go start a podcast." And I thought podcasts were reserved for big brands and big celebrities or influencers on social media. And it's like, a podcast, me? And he's like, "Yes, you've got a lot to share, a lot to say." And then the next voice came in next morning saying, "You're here to wake others up to their infinite and fully embodied potential." I was like, "What?" I really didn't understand what that meant at the time. But I did. I started my podcast. I've been doing it now 3.5 years. By the summer of 2018, so a little more than 3.5 years, then I started running masterminds. Then that grew into training programs, coaching programs. And along the journey, I've had many more awakenings, so to speak, of just who do I really want to serve? Who do I really want to be as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a guide? And then it began to morph into it's not really a trainer or a coach anymore. And I know we're going to get there. So where I am today, leading various very intimate, very curated programs for people who truly want to step into their fullness, their full embodied potential, not from a dream from maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, but who they are now with all of their new insights and wisdom. So that's what brought me here today. And we get to have a conversation around what sovereign leadership really means.
Michelle, I have a little bit of a similar story, though I didn't go to a Tony Robbins event, where I just realized I needed to start a podcast and go down that route. And I
Mm.
didn't until I drew it all up and wrote the vision map. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do about it, how I was going to do or anything. But I knew I was going to podcast. And for you, you got okay, you went from TV, you go, I'm going to podcast. You got that voice, but still you could podcast about a million different things. What is it that made you decide to go into helping people learn leadership, if I'm saying it right, or train people on leadership to be able to take them to their success, to the top of their mountain? How did that all come about?
Thank you for asking. So, for clarity, I actually did stay on Extra, the show that I was on one day a week with my own shopping segment. I was on that show for 4 full years and 3 additional years plus that wake up at Date with Destiny. But at Date with Destiny, I learned that life, business, entrepreneurship, leadership, just living with more fulfillment and, of course, a lot of success along the way because we're making a deep, lasting impact. It starts in the mind, mindset, psychology. We've heard that, right? Like 80% of business and business results comes down to psychology and mindset. It's 20% mechanics. I actually would like to argue that I think it's about 98% mindset and 2% strategy and tools and all the things that we think we need. So where I started with my podcast, it was actually originally titled The Mindset Mashup. I wanted to interview my heroes, my mentors, the people who had woken me up, the books that I had read that changed my life, the podcasts that I was listening to. If I could be honored by having some of my heroes onto my show and we could talk about their mindset, and then we could dovetail it into some really cool special teachings for my listeners. That was my dream. And so we did that for a full year. Then the more that I got on the mic and the veil began to lift between me and the mic and who I thought I needed to be and or hiding behind some of my mentors and heroes. And I've been very fortunate to have many of the people that you've had here on this show, very similar kind of ecosystem on my show. But I realized a year in, that wasn't the full totality of what the power and the momentum of my podcast was really all about. To your point, we can go anywhere with it. But what I knew that I was speaking about more than anything was empowered, embodied action from an awakened soul. In other words, I've woken up. This is who I am. It's what I want to do. It's what I want to create in the world. It's the impact that I want to make in the world. And if I can just believe in myself and embody that worthiness, then that's the empowered action. So Fire and Soul became the new title of my podcast. It's been the same ever since. It's a very popular show. Men and women listen, a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of people just waking up more and more deeply to what do I really want to be doing in the world? Empowered action from an awakened soul is Fire and Soul. So that's where we've gotten to this point. And of course, it evolves and changes as we grow.
That is such a great name. I absolutely love it. It's
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
you've mentioned a little bit about this. You touched on it, and I want to dive down a little bit more into it. Why did you do this? Why are you doing this? What's the reason behind this? What's your purpose on this?
The truth is that I'm a co-founder in a company called the Podcast Accelerator. And we have now taken, by spring, we will have taken 150 beautiful souls that have a message on their heart, that want to utilize their voice to make a difference in the world. And so we take them from, I have no idea what my podcast would even be about, like where I was at Date with Destiny, to being on all the major apps by the end of the program. This is not open. It's not even going to open again this year. I'm not soliciting this business in any way. But what I'm trying to share is that I'm really present to, I want to help to amplify voices and visions and being enacted, being embodied into the world. And oftentimes the type of stuff that I share in my podcast these days, which is solely and exclusively devoted to sovereignty, sovereign leadership. It's like, who am I underneath the mask? Underneath the filters. And I know a lot of women get that, especially on social media. I don't just mean the voice filters, but even the visual filters and all of the things that I think are me, this identity crisis that I believe a lot of us are in, especially if you're over 40, at least that's my world, and a lot of my listeners and communities world as well. There's a new paradigm that's emerged over these past 2 years. The world is not the same. And so if I can help even one person understand who they actually be, underneath the title of entrepreneur or role as a mom or a dad or a spouse or a leader in their community, who am I underneath all of that? That I believe is our true potency. And when we can unearth that, we actually begin to reveal our sovereignty, which needs no external authority or other person or government or system to tell us who we be. It's a little deep, but I know you go into the woo. So it's like, who am I? Honestly, without even my name or the accolades behind a beautiful intro that you read at the beginning of the conversation, that's our true potency. That's where our sovereignty resides. So I'm here to help people reclaim our innate sovereignty that's just been clouded and covered up and filtered and masked. And it's just so fake out there these days for a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of leaders trying to pretend that business is as usual from 2 years ago. It's not. And the more that we can get present to that, the more that we can actually open up such a beautiful community and ecosystem of deep, intimate conversations that help us be who we fully are within that like-minded community.
This is Cultivating Sovereign Leadership with Michelle Sorro, and I'm going to spell that website of hers. It's michelle-sorro.com. It's MICHELLE with the dash, just the symbol, not the word, dash Sorro, SORRO.com, Michelle-Sorro.com. Michelle, absolutely amazing. I love this topic. I could talk about it all day long. Let's get into your vision path, drive down a little bit more. And I think one of the first things I'd like to do is, as far as sovereign, the word sovereign is in the title. And when I think of a sovereign, I think of the leader, the ruler, a monarch, somebody who's a king. So let's start off defining a sovereign and I guess how that pertains to us.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because these days, especially in the world of self-development, personal development, spiritual development, which by the way, I'm sure you agree, I would imagine that you would agree, is at the very core of growing a business and being an entrepreneur. I remember hearing Tony Robbins say that he was a very important mentor to me in my first 2 years of building my business. And I was at an event that he does once a year called Business Mastery. And he just was walking the stage and he said something off the cuff and it changed my life. And he said, all of business growth, all of entrepreneurship is an inside job, i.e. a spiritual job. We have to meet ourselves, our edges, our immaturity, our imposter syndrome. So while that would be the correct definition of sovereignty from probably the Webster's or Merriam Dictionary, the way that I have come up with my own definition, it's a fully aligned and completely and devotional embodiment of our own personal power. And what gets in the way of that oftentimes is the I can't energy, or sometimes I hate to say this, but like a victim energy. Well, I can't do that. I don't have enough social followers, or I can't do that. I don't like the sound of my voice. I can't launch a podcast. Who would listen to me, right? Which is the most powerful and effective platform for growing our reach, especially in our current digital climate. And so getting out of that and really stepping more into our holy maturity, our innate birthright of being perfect, whole, and complete exactly as we are, standing firm in our unwavering faith that we can be who we truly are. And it's not as a ruler, it's as a benevolent guide who wants to lift others alongside with them.
Very, very good. We're all a sovereign ruler, if I could use it as an adjective. We're sovereign master over our own destiny, over our own business as an entrepreneur or small business owner or what have you. We're in charge. And the more I think we learn that we're in charge, the more that we are in charge, the more we can be in charge, if that makes sense that way.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we use to be in charge, to grow our business, is we have people help us. And I have, for myself, I have a mentor. I have someone that's a coach. I have someone that acts as a consultant when I need. There's different people for different things. I touched upon this at the very beginning in the intro. We've got trainers, coaches, guides. We've got Sherpas. We have all these different types of people that help us. But you specialize and you focus, I believe, in helping take somebody almost by the hand to success. Let's go into the differences and perhaps what you do and why that difference is important, if I'm saying the question the right way.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Thank you for that. And it depends on where we are in our journey. Um, Especially as, for example, someone who wants to be a very successful coach uh, or trainer and grow their business from a one-to-one model to a one-to-many model. That's what helped me get to the place where I am today. So it's very valuable to have the right steps and to understand the upskilling that's required, and of course the strategy. I mean, like you, I've invested well over $250,000 in coaches and trainers that have gotten me there. But ultimately, the people that come to me are at the next stage in their evolution. Maybe their business is going, maybe they're hitting 10K months or 5K months or whatever they're looking for in terms of how they're going to feel successful. Maybe it's much more, it's all relative, right? But they are living life on their own terms. They're making the impact. But then ultimately what happens is that it kind of leads to a little bit of burnout. And next thing we know, it's like, wow, I can only teach so much strategy. I can only teach so much step-by-step direction. I want to go deeper. And this is what was happening for me. I wanted to go deeper with the coaches and the trainers that I had hired, but they were unable to go deeper. I was looking for a container that was going to ask me to take a look within and to really discover what was in the way for me making a quantum, I call heart leap, from where I am to where I want to go. And it's not more strategy. So the distinction in my world from a trainer or a coach to a mentor or a guide is it's basically threefold. It comes down to the focus. What's the outcome? The focus, the questioning, and the outcome. So a coach or a trainer is going to give you step-by-step direction, a blueprint, follow this, but then you're following someone else's blueprint, which I know can work. But what about when we want to integrate what we've learned and really embody our own truth and really lead from what's pulling us forward? I don't even say driving us forward, pulling us forward, because we all get to that place. We're like, I don't want to copy or mimic anyone else. I want to uncover my own truth, my own sovereignty, my own potency. So I don't really hold by the hand, but what I do is I shine a light on what might be getting in the way from you being able to see that you don't need another blueprint. You don't need another step-by-step direction. You do not need another strategy session, right? That may happen every couple of years as you're like, ooh, my branding feels off, or my messaging, it's not quite as crystallized as I would want it to be, or man, even the audience that I'm speaking to, I'm shifting who I am. So I need to actually speak to my audience, my community, in a way that is true for me versus trying to stick with something that we think has always worked. But maybe there's a time to be refining that with a mentor who's going to guide in a way where it's fluid. It might not have an expiration date. It's not as structured, and it's just more open, and it's really in the heart space, and it's really deep, and it ends up quantum leaping the result because it's so authentic.
That is a very nice way to describe the difference on what you do. It's very unique and I really like it. So that's going to help us, I see, take us to where we need to go, how we need to go, when we need to go, and all those points. And I can see that that's very workable. So let's kind of tie that into now the sovereign leadership. I know you have some very key points about it that will really help. So can you go over some of these points and maybe drill into them, and so that we can see the difference and see why this is so important to go this way?
Yes, my friend. Thank you for asking. So there's 5 core tenets of where I am now, and things are fluid because the more that I grow and evolve, the more that what I teach or what I mentor uh, obviously morphs as well. But where we start is all around awareness. So a lot of people, probably even listening to the show, have gotten to the point where they have success, right? And maybe you've hit the 7 figures, maybe you've hit the 6 figures, the multiple 6 figures, whatever that at one point was the brass bell, like I got that. But then oftentimes we're looking at our lives and it doesn't necessarily feel as fulfilling. So I ask everyone to take a holistic viewpoint of your life. And it's not just your business, because a business is just the external representation of what's happening on the interior. So if you're kind of stagnant, then it's a beautiful opportunity, a gift to look at, where am I still holding on to some old identity or to some old patterns, some old beliefs or rules. So one of the things that I do, and I always lead by example, is I ask you to take a look at what are you consuming? Right? This is an awareness around a holistic viewpoint of your life. Are you plugged into television or Netflix or Apple TV or social media? Are you consuming a lot of alcohol and a lot of kind of crap stuff, right? Ingesting into your body so you don't feel as lit up and in the flow that is our natural state. And you're smiling, yes. So I had to do this first. I completely went cold turkey on all of TV, all of Netflix. That was really difficult to cut out because I realized that I was just being programmed with more telling me and my mindset what to think and who to be like and what to model after, instead of really being with myself. Cut the alcohol, cut most of the crap, lost a bunch of weight, which was always a nice benefit, and ultimately found that I could really tune in to that still small voice that was speaking to me when I was cracked wide open at date with destiny. Yes, exhausted, but emotionally available. And so awareness is key. Taking a look at everything, our friendships, some of the obligations that may no longer align. Then we go to alignment, which is the second tenet. Alignment, what feels fully aligned? And a wonderful barometer that your listeners could try on right now. And it is fail proof. It's, does this decision, my yes or my no, cause me to feel expansive in my energy, or do I feel like I'm contracting? When I'm considering responding to this message on social media or an email or a text, does it feel expansive, or am I doing it out of duty or obligation? Now, in business, sometimes we do need to do the things that are called admin and the dutiful responses, but could we get a VA to do that? Does it feel like it's diminishing our light? And you can get VAs for, 10, 15 bucks an hour, and they're happy to take on very, very part-time work. A VA is a virtual assistant. Changed my life. 2 years into my business, I was one of those that didn't think that I could afford it. I was a solopreneur and taking on all that extra stress, all that extra obligation. So that really shifted things. Or even sometimes when someone's calling, which by the way still does happen, even though it's rare, someone's actually calling to speak on the phone. And it's like, right now, I look at my phone. Does this feel expansive, or am I in contraction? And if I'm in contraction, then I have to look at what's up for me. And this is oftentimes very key for our business. Are we even doing what lights us up anymore? Getting into full on alignment and making sure that we're doing those things. Reclamation is tenet number 3. Reclamation is what I touched on a moment ago. Who are you? Whatever your pronouns are, maybe we swap them all to sovereign/being, right? He, him, she, her, they, their, whatever that is for you. Ultimately, who are you underneath even those labels? A reclamation of the truth of who you are, without the stories, without the identity, without the success, without the accolades. Who are you? And for those of us here in the West, and I'm an avid proponent of plant medicine and psychotrope medicine, I just am, because it allows me to tap into the quantum realm of infinite possibilities. And you know who invited me for my first time sipping ayahuasca in Costa Rica was Jack Canfield, who's been on your show. And Jack Canfield has been a mentor and a friend of mine now as a result of me asking him on my podcast, getting connected, connecting in the soul, him inviting me to sip the plant medicine with him. And I was like, Jack Canfield's doing plant medicine? Wow, this just got super cool. And I was like, and I was too scared to do it. So I was so scared because I had learned a mastermind mindset. This was 2 years into my business. It's like, whoa, what do you mean let go completely and reclaim my soul? But I learned that by sipping plant medicine with him and a bunch of other incredible souls, part of his leadership program. I can't remember the name right now, but it's this very select group. And I was very honored to be invited. A Transformation Leadership Council, that's the name of the group. And they're all New York Times bestselling authors and, megawatts that you probably have had on this show as well. So that's where I learned the reclamation of my soul is so important, because here in the West, we achieve this success, but we have this utter lack of fulfillment. Or what does this all really mean? And what is it all going toward anyway? But we can tap into the heart space. And I say that for the men listening too. Men might more respond into my lion energy. Who am I and what's my unique roar? And I'm very, very passionate about this, as you can see, because my purpose has led to opening up this unbelievable, ravenous passion. But it couldn't happen without a reclamation of who we really are underneath all the other stuff and the doing and the achieving and the action. So that's the third tenet. The fourth one is integration, taking the awareness, the alignment, and the reclamation of our truth, integrating it into our business, our life, our friendships, our relationships, and in the quiet moments where we are willing to devote time to being with ourselves. That is so key. You can go to a seminar, you can listen to this podcast, and I know you're dropping gold every single episode, and I call them doses of medicine. That's just my world. But are we really integrating? Yeah, that was a great conversation on the Tony Show, right? Are you really taking a moment to take the deep breath, to journal the gratitude, to get the clarity, to understand who you be? Then the fifth and final tenet as of right now is devotional embodiment. Because we can't just do it in one area. There's a great book that came out many decades ago, and it was like, wherever you go, there you are, or how you do anything is how you do everything. Maybe you're even familiar with some of these quotes. So we can kind of write them off as trite. And yeah, it's been said, but the foundation of that is so true. Can we embody all of these truths and weave this sovereign leadership into every area of our lives? And especially when we're alone and nobody's watching, then it starts to bleed into all the other areas of our life, and our business becomes so potent that we're no longer efforting. We're literally being called into clarity and into empowered action that feels fully embodied and super aligned and resonant.
Michelle, that is absolutely amazing. And since you mentioned it, and only because you mentioned it, you mentioned your way to find out more about the soul or the spirit or connect. I take the shortcut, and I'm kind of teasing a little bit. I'm being a little silly. I focus on God and I connect more and more spiritually. And for me, that really works. It's very simple. It takes a little work sometimes because the mind can get very, very busy. And I only mention it because you mentioned an alternative, if I could say it that way, a plant-based. And I thought I would mention that just focusing directly on God just really does it for me. It just starts opening up, and he's so vast. He's created everything. He's the one true one of all creation, and focusing on him really does it for me. And I'm very grateful for him to be able to podcast, to be able to have great guests on like you. And there's probably more to it about the plant-based, and I've never tried it. But so I'm not trying to knock it. I'm just trying to say that's what I like to do. And I find it's very, very workable. And I
Yes.
really do appreciate you going over all those points. Those are very, very good.
Yeah.
Wow. We've learned a lot about sovereign leadership and some of the main points. So now, is there anything to get it all together? You have a program very successful. You've gotten a lot of people on that take them all the way through. And I've got to say, and I know I've just asked you like a question, but I have to say, entrepreneurs, and even when I started, to be able to go up to six figures was like, it was like going for the gold.
Yeah.
But then when you get your six figures, you have to set up a new vision, a new goal, because
That's
now
it.
That's like the bronze now. So when you take your people all the way up to success, do you find that? And I know I've asked you probably two questions now. I'm going to turn it over to you, but I wanted to go into that, making people the sovereign leader that they are, and then taking them up perhaps a couple levels.
Yeah. So you're going to have to tell me what the two questions are.
No worries. One is putting this all together for the entrepreneur, the
Mhm.
businessman, on using these points to actually take their business up to where they feel it should be, which at the time that they're starting or rolling, they have a goal, which I call gold, GOLD. It's where they feel they need to be. We're running the Olympics now. I'm going to go for the gold. I'm going to go and get 6 digits a year, mid 6 digits, whatever. But once we do that, which now goes into question number 2, I'm kind of bringing in your sovereign leadership and how to cultivate it and bring people up, because it's a whole new paradigm shift when you go from one level to another, especially when you're redefining what the new gold is.
That's exactly it. And the truth is that what got you to six figures is not going to get you to multiple six figures, and it's certainly not going to get you to seven figures. And what's so fascinating, and you can probably relate, and I know a lot of your listeners will, is that when is it ever enough? We get to six figures, now we're like, oh, wait, no, I want mid six figures. Then we get to the mid six figures, like, wait, it's only going to be worth something if I get to seven figures. And then it's like, wait, no, it has to be multiple seven figures per year. Wait, no, it has to be eight figures. It's this endless pursuit. And we all know, based on a lot of our past history and this conversation here, that does not lead to fulfillment. So we have to rewrite the rules for ourselves as we grow and as we evolve. So sometimes, yes, it includes making more money because you're making a deeper impact. And those two oftentimes correlate, right? The higher the income, the higher the impact. That's just the way that this works. But sometimes I work with leaders who are like, okay, I actually don't really care if I get to multiple seven figures or seven figures even at all. I just want to do something that feels so aligned, that feels truly me. If I were to put in a nutshell what sovereign leadership is, it's, are you fully self expressed for exactly who you be without the mask, without the performing, without all the filters, right? Without ever, whatever you think you need to do that your audience expects from you, what would happen if you took a shift and you actually stood for the most resounding truth that's in your soul now? I'm imagining for you, Tony, the nature of the conversations that you've been having on this podcast has evolved over time. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, in fact, it evolved so much. I created a new show. At first, when I first started, was Revenue Chat Radio, where I spoke with entrepreneurs and we talked about what what made them successful, how they got to success. And as I went through that, the level of people and the success of people changed, where I wound up getting more and more people at the top of their category, or very well known at the top of their category, millionaires, billionaires, and so forth. So it all shifted, where at the very
Mhm.
beginning it was, if you're an entrepreneur, I want to talk to you, and it's no offense, but now it's different, and I took it up several levels.
And not only that, from observation, at the heart of a lot of your conversations is all around spiritual or self development. And you've also just shared that for you, God is the most important thing for you. And that's always been your lighthouse, so to speak. And I love that. So I think that going back to that Tony Robbins quote that I heard at Business Mastery, he was just kind of pacing the stage, and it was just a sort of off the cuff comment that was the most important comment that I heard in that 5-day business mastery event. And yes, I tripled my income within 9 months, and I learned a lot of strategy and a lot of really cool techniques from that business mastery event. But what I learned the most that has pulled me forward is all of business growth is a spiritual job. So if anyone listening is feeling empty at your success, or still thinking that your success, and once you get to those first six figures, is going to be the cure all, kind of like me landing on Extra, which was the little girl dream, it's not. If we haven't actually met our maker in the quiet, still moments, where we get to be with God, or however that would be for you, meditation in nature, etc. So the way that it works with me is there's two different ways the way and someone can join me. They can join me in a larger container, which is called Sovereign Circle, and it's 3 months at a time. And it's a beautiful, very aware, very conscious community of entrepreneurs and visionary leaders who are learning how to embody some of these teachings, really sort of at a more, I would say the shallower end of the pool, but it's enough for people to get to know me and to get to know the community. Then there is a 6-month mentorship that's not open right now, that I only open up twice a year. And that's sovereign leadership. And I only take a very small handful of people through a very intimate experience. We basically deconstruct everything in your life and in your business to put it all back together again. And it really kind of takes me back to what I learned at Date with Destiny. But obviously it's my own integration, my own awakening, my own sovereignty. That's just the guide. And it's just a suggestion, an invitation, an opportunity to look at where you're still filtering, look at where you're still second guessing, look at where you're still going along to get along, or the who's who sort of racket that's just this endless comparison, right? And this endless ladder that we feel like we have to climb. It's like, can we fully embody who we really want to be? And what I find is so magical, and I've had this happen for many clients, because, my programs have generated millions and millions and millions of profit, not just gross revenue, profit for my entrepreneur clients that come through, is that once we really step into this and we allow ourselves to start something new that might be scary, or to dig a little deeper that might be a little confronting, we actually give ourselves the freedom to finally be who we were meant to be all along, without all the posturing and performing that seems to be a bit of an epidemic these days in a lot of leadership.
I love it so much. I'm almost speechless, Michelle. This is so beautiful. It's music to our ears as an entrepreneur, small businessman. I'm very, very serious about that to the audience. Check this out again. This is what the show's all about. What you provide, what you offer. Absolutely love it. And one of the things I like, just a slight little tangent, but still staying on topic, is one of the things I like to do where possible. We want to learn from you. You're at the top of your category. You're a sovereign leader in your own business. Sometimes I like to know, are there any particular habits that contribute to your success in accomplishing your vision and keeping you successful?
Oh, that's one of my favorite questions. And it reminds me of my first days when I was hosting the Mindset Mashup podcast. I would always ask about their morning routine, right? That's like a big thing in the Millionaires Club or the Entrepreneurs Club. What's your morning routine? I'm going to flip it on its head, Tony. I don't have a morning routine, but I have a very strong devotional nightly ritual. So at about 8:30 p.m., I unplug from all devices except for where I want to consciously go and grow. And I happen to learn from a lot of spiritual teachers on YouTube or podcasts. That's just where I learn and grow the most, just like your listeners tuning into you here. And it's got to be really conscious. So whether it's Kyle C., so the Aubrey Marcus podcast, or your show, I want to get the inside glimpse of what really matters. Then I turn it all off. And then I have a music playlist that I called my medicine playlist. And I've been curating this music that really taps me into my spiritual portal, my oneness with God. I certainly don't need plant medicine a lot. I've only done it that 1 week with Jack Canfield, but I'm going back in about 2 weeks to try it again 2.5 years later. So I don't want anyone to think this is what I'm always doing. I'm just an avid fan of anyone who's curious, and you're not supposed to tell anyone you should do it. The medicine needs to call you, and your listeners will know if they've got a nudge of curiosity about that. By the way, curiosity is the gateway to all things gold. Allow ourselves to be curious. Okay, back to my nightly routine. Then I listen to music. Sometimes it'll be Ram Dass, with fire sounds in the background and like East Forest music. And I'm listening to one of his speeches around sitting around the fire. And this allows me to fully relax, fully get present to how blessed I am, how beautiful life is. That literally, if I died tomorrow, I'm so good. So yes, facing mortality has been a big piece in all of this sovereign leadership that I guide, so that we can really live really live every single day. Other key things, I exercise regularly. I'm out in nature all the time. I hike about 5 days a week. I'm in the LA area, so I hike in the mountains with my pup, Samson. I do not drink any alcohol. I do not do any drugs, including cannabis. I'm not judging anyone who does, but I want to clear mind, body, and soul. And the first way to test positive for sovereignty is to eliminate some of those things that are keeping your brain foggy and clouded. And once you have this clear channel, then you begin to become more intuitive. Then you can hear those types of messages that I was able to hear at Date with Destiny and that I continue to cultivate. That's true sovereignty. Now you're co-creating with the divine. And it sounds a little woo, but this is where our power resides. It's all within our own souls. But we got to get the stuff out of the way, which is maybe the social media addiction, the television addiction, the news addiction, the headline addiction, right? Having to be up with the latest. Like, what if you didn't? What if you just said, one day a week, I'm going to go in and catch all the headlines and I'm going to know that I know enough, but I'm going to allow myself to just be with all of the blessings and all of the gifts of life. And I'm going to allow that to guide whatever my decision might be next, instead of getting caught up in the rat race of the to-do list. The to-do list needs to go away. In fact, stop naming it the to-do list. Maybe call it a to-manifest list. Then maybe your divine team can start to work on your behalf and have effortless results. Because, my friend, I have seen it happen over and over again when we learn to get out of our own way and into the flow. It's all awaiting us if we are willing.
This is so amazing. I could talk about this all day long and do a whole nother show about this whole topic, unplugging and just really, if you want to say being who you really want to be, it's not quite, it's that concept, but not quite those words. But I just love how you unplug and just really kind of do what you want to do or what you feel you should do, instead of perhaps what media tells you to do or fills your head with or whatever. I like that you unplug it at night at 8:30. Bravo. That's the way to do it. And then going out on hikes. I've lived in Los Angeles for a long time. It's almost impossible to go out for a hike. Just driving anywhere takes so long. So I'm being a little silly. No, very, very, very. And we just have a few more minutes. I'm just connecting on this really, really well. Are there we've talked about the sovereign leadership. We've talked about the routines. I'm just looking if there's any other resources that perhaps you'd like to share with our audience entrepreneurs. You've told us about your schedule, your program, and I just want to make sure we didn't leave anything else on the table before we end off.
Thank you, Tony. Well, I have a very potent podcast called Fire and Soul, as you know. And one of these days, I got to get you on there as well. A podcast that I run is some of your listeners will resonate with this term. It's an awakening podcast, especially after these past 2 years, and understanding how valuable and how critical it is that we get off the mainstream media, that we learn to think for ourselves, critical thinking, sovereign being. Don't allow any other external source to tell you what to do or what you should do with your children unless that aligns. But do you even know if it aligns? See, one of the most important things that I want to just piggyback on that we were talking about a moment ago about my nightly routine, that is my devotional practice every single night. I sleep better. I wake up feeling refreshed. I also don't look at my phone for the first hour of being awake. All of those things. Why? I don't want to be programmed. I don't want to be programmed on social media comparing, right? Or getting the dopamine hits that's all manufactured and fake. Oh, wow, I got a bunch of new likes or comments overnight. I don't want to live according to the false narrative, if that makes sense. Or, gosh, the programming in television and even the shows that I used to love, and I hated going cold turkey on letting them go, but it was like, it's never enough. I'm always in a rat race. If I'm always looking at what's being programmed, either in the mainstream or in the television shows that I loved watching, and I love still to get lost in a really good film, but these days it's more documentary and it's all around my soul growth, because what I find is that when I decided not to invest in the business coaches, this all happened early 2021, I invested about $60,000 by the beginning of the year. And by July, I was like, these coaches can't help me with what I'm really working out on the inside. So then I sought out 2 spiritual teachers They're teachers, and they helped me really dive deeply into crystal healing. And all that can sound so woo, but the truth is that it was 50-50 men and women in these programs that I was doing. And it was like, wow, this is it. And then I got more clarity and my business started to grow and I had more time off. What was happening? And I know it's because all of this began to dovetail. It's not what people want to hear. They want the quick fix. They want just tell me to do ABC, or I'm going to follow your blueprint and I'm going to get those results. But it won't be the results that you're looking for, and it won't ever have that deep soul fulfillment. So you've got to first understand who you be, get aware to that, align with that, and embody that. But yes, these tools of unplugging and knowing who you are and what you really want, the hardest question to answer. What do you want? It's not about the money. It's not about the money, but the money's nice. Don't get me wrong. I have a very nice lifestyle, and I'm very, very honored to have a team that can help me and to be able to get to feed my dog the best. But it's not about the money. It's about the deep lasting impact and the deep fulfillment that we can only know what that really means if we stop distracting and comparing, and we can actually just listen to what's pulling us forward at this stage in our own evolution.
Bravo. Once again, we talked about cultivating sovereign leadership with Michelle Sorro, and you can find her at michelle-sorro.com. Michelle, absolutely wonderful. I loved it. This is a divine interview. Thanks for sharing with us today.
I am deeply honored. Thank you very much, Tony, for having me on and letting me share.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with me while we chatted with Michelle Sorro, cultivating sovereign leadership. I'm inspired. I believe we are our own sovereign identity, and I've learned quite a few things about that in this interview, and I'm going to listen to this again because I really want to drill down on some of these points and take a good look at them in terms of my own life, my own business. Really, really motivational, I think. We define sovereign right at the beginning because a lot of us think it is a ruler, a monarch, a king, and it was very good how she defined that. I like that. And we went into the differences between a trainer, a coach, a consultant, a guide, a Sherpa. And we talked about the sovereign leadership points about it and the levels. And we talked about her programs. And we also talked about, well, once you reach the top in your business, whatever that level is that you call the gold, perhaps when you first start, you have, hey, here's where we're going to go. This is our gold. And then once you achieve that, you have new sites. Well, now that's bronze. What's the new gold? And you go on up. It's a different mindset in a way. It's different principles to get to that point. And Michelle's really got she's got it drilled down. She's really got this down pat on how to get to the next level wherever you are. I love it. And let us know what you think in the comments or on social media, what you think about this episode. And please do remember supporting the show with a nice review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us grow. Really appreciate it. And of course, I know I say this a lot now, share this with friends. Friends help friends. That's what friends are for. All right. Use this and let's help you move on your journey to success. Thanks. And remember, just take action. Success awaits those who persevere and remain steadfast despite the odds. Sow good seeds, do good deeds. And join me on the next episode of The Tony DUrso Show.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's edition of The Tony DUrso Show with his key influencers. Be sure to tune in again next Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Influencers channel.